Hey, good morning. So, I thought it would be fun to answer some questions that I've been getting about my cross-country trip on video and answers them in kind of some of my favorite places in Honolulu that I like to visit. So, let's do that today. It's been raining so much here this week. This is the first day that I'm able to get out with the cameras and stuff around the King Street cycle track in Honolulu. This is probably the major artery for bicyclists to get through town. Hawaii or Honolulu is not a really bike-friendly city, so if you ever come to visit, just make sure you ride very defensively, because I don't know if you noticed, but this is a one-way street that goes from in front of me to behind me, but the cycle track is two ways, and so people turning up to a mountainside from this road, they don't look, and so they'll turn in front of you, they'll slam to the side of you. So whenever there's a car coming, you just kind of like be really, really careful. But there's quite a few cyclists on it. So, but this is a much prettier route than I usually take it to work. So I thought it would be fun to show you this. Okay, here we are at our first stop. This is Thomas Square, which is a cool little park here in Honolulu that's not really well used. It does have some fun homeless people that hang around here sometimes, but it's innocent and safe here. But it's a cool little park right outside of downtown Honolulu. So I thought this would be a great place to start our first question. So I got a lot of questions about the bicycle. So here's the bicycle. One of the questions is, what kind of bike is it? This is a Priority 600 that has been, a lot of stuff has been changed on it. It's normally kind of like a commuter gravel bicycle. And I made some changes to it for the trip. I put some new rims and tires on it to make the tires a little bit bigger and a little bit thinner for road biking. I changed out the handlebar with the Jones H bar with a little bit of lift. I changed out the seat, and that's kind of it. Everything else, the bones of it is stock. So, hey.
Gotta get one ready.
Yeah. Good. The bones of it is stock. The only thing that's a little bit different than a regular bicycle is probably here. This is a pinion gearbox, and it uses instead of like a derailleur and a chain like a normal bicycle, this has a gearbox, kind of like a transmission in a vehicle in here, and it's driven by a carbon fiber belt. And the reason why I liked this setup a lot is the maintenance is there's a lot less maintenance you have to do on the road with this. All the gears are kind of sealed up in the box, so no matter how dirty you get or how dirty the roads are, all that kind of stuff, is you don't have to worry about the gears getting dirty or having to clean a cassette and chain ring and stuff. So that's why I loved it. Also, the pinion, the Gates carbon drive, the belt drive, you don't have to oil it. So that's kind of another maintenance thing. I was trying to get the maintenance down as much as possible, and it performed really well. So when I talk about a belt on the video, that's the belt we're talking about here. You asked me if I had mechanical issues. I didn't really have any mechanical issues on the bicycle. I did have a few little things that went wrong though. I have a dynamo in the front wheel. The plan was to kind of charge my batteries with the dynamo in the front wheel, but it didn't really work out that way. I had a problem where the little plug that plugs into the dynamo and goes into my light, that thing kind of came apart probably about 800 or 900 miles into the trip. And so the dynamo stopped working at all. And that I like to have a front light on all the time just for visibility. And I was pretty much using it just to power the light, but it got messed up. So I had to fix that. I think in Cut Bank, I went into a little sporting goods store, and they had all these wiring harnesses for car stereos they're trying to get rid of, and I spent like $5 to get just a bunch of wires, and I fixed that. I just kind of rewired it and taped it and zip tied it, and it worked great after that. I still didn't charge my stuff with it because I didn't trust my batteries that they were going to get charged. So I would just charge my batteries with a regular wall outlet when I would get there. But I still have that repair on the bike right now. It's working great. I've changed it a little bit since I got back. I kept the back rack on, but I also had a front Old Man Mountain rack. I love these things. They're awesome. You can carry tons of stuff with them. I didn't have mirrors, but I did have a Garmin radar in the back. Didn't really need the mirrors so much on most of the trip because the roads are so remote that there weren't a lot of traffic. But you'll see some of the videos where there was a lot of traffic. And I didn't really need like mirrors for that. I just stayed off the road because you can hear them. I hear the trucks coming from far away. I usually use the radar when I was on a back road so I would get lulled into just kind of riding, and then the thing will beep, and because once in a while a car would come by, so I use that for that. It's not a super expensive bike. I took advice from people who have done the cross-country trip before that the best equipment that you have is that the best equipment is the equipment that you have, you know. And I don't think it's any special bike. I think the bicycle itself cost about $2,500. So it's not super expensive, but it performed really well on the trip, and I was really happy with it. Breakdown. So the first, I had a dynamo breakdown. The second issue I had was with my seat. Right before I left, the seat rail broke. I had a Brooks saddle on this. The seat rail broke, and so I got a new seat right before I left, and I was worried about that because it's a seat that, you know, I'd never tried before. And then when I got to Ohio, that seat broke too, the same place in the bar, and I had to replace it. But the bike shop guy noticed that I sat really high up, and I like this setup because I don't like to be crunched over when I'm riding. So when I'm sitting up high, most of your butt pressure is on the back of the seat, and when you're going thousands of miles, it's gonna stress a seat that's not designed for that. And I think that was the issue. So I switched to one of these kind of like sit upright seats, and it's been not a problem. And also, one other change to the bike is I got a new post, a seat post. It's a thud buster seat post. It has a little bit of suspension in it to smooth out the roads a little bit because there's no other suspension in the bike at all. So that's the bicycle. So we'll pack up and we'll go to the next area. One thing that I forgot to tell you is I didn't have any flat tires at all on the trip. Not one flat, just kind of amazing. I was using these Marathon Plus tires. I did elect to rotate my back tire to my front tire about a couple of thousand miles into the trip, maybe 3,000 miles into the trip, just because the back tire was starting to wear down a lot faster than the front tire. So I did that, but the bicycle, there's nothing that went wrong. No flats. And I think it was a combination of the route that I took, which was way north, so there's not a lot of thorny things on the road that could get your tire, and 90% of the route is on back roads, secondary roads, trails, grass trails, dirt roads that don't have, like retread wires and stuff in the shoulder to pop your tires. So yeah, it was a really good luck on the tire side. I did break one tube though. That was my fault. When I was swapping the tires around, the back rim of my bike is really tight to get the tire on, and I broke a tube with a tire iron, but that doesn't really count as a flat tire, I don't think, so. Okay, we're at our next stop. Behind me here is Iolani Palace. If you ever come to visit, you can take a tour of that. It's really, really interesting and cool. So I had a question about what my most difficult challenge was. I think the most difficult physical challenge was probably, it's hard, probably the second day of the trip where I had to climb over Washington Pass. That was a long, grueling day. And that day I also had a hard time finding a place to stay that night. So there's a lot of anxiety while I was climbing this giant hill, this giant mountain to get to the top of this pass, right? See, that was really physically challenging, and coming up on a video coming up later, probably coming out of Fargo, or like the craziest headwinds that I've ever experienced coming out of Fargo. And there was some sections where it was really, really cold from probably from Cleveland, around Cleveland to Buffalo. For some reason, there was a cold snap that came through, and I was freezing the whole time. And the only time where there's a couple of times where I got low on water and stuff, where I was like a little worried that, physically I was gonna have some problems. But I think that cold snap going into Buffalo was probably the scariest physical thing, where I thought I would freeze, and I was in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't know how to get warm because it was just rainy and cold all the time. I think the biggest emotional thing to get over was being alone, and it was a really lonely trip. There wasn't a lot of companionship along the way, like during the ride. Sure, I met up with some people like when I got to towns, but during the day it was like you're alone and you had to be self-sufficient. Everything depended on you, and there's no help. So I had to be really confident in my bicycle and my repair skills, in case something happened. Make sure I had enough water and enough food, because you're on your own. There's when you're out in a logging road somewhere in a mountain, there's nobody there that can help you. So yeah, that emotionally is probably the isolation. But that was only in the beginning. Eventually I learned to embrace that, and I loved kind of being out. And once I knew that I could do it and I wasn't going to die, then I longed to be, away from towns and cities and just being in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere. So I guess emotionally that was a hard thing, but it turned into something that made me stronger, and I really started enjoying that. What was the scariest event? The scariest event is probably the tornado in Montana. That was scary. The reason why I don't think it's the most challenging thing, but because it only lasted about an hour maybe, that I was in that, but it was scary, and it was something I've never seen before. So, and it happened so fast. It was blue skies, and then it was black. And I was in the middle of nowhere. There was no shelter, there was no trees, no nothing. It was just grass. And this thing hit, and I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know it was a tornado at the time. I didn't realize it was that until I got to the Springs with Tracy's store when she told me about it. But yeah, that was probably the scariest thing that I saw on my journey. The most bizarre thing that I observed, was probably, I'll put it up, but it's probably this American flag this lady had up in her motel. I thought it was just so bizarre. This Republican lady, where she was like militant Republican lady, and it just made it a little bit weird for me to stay there. It was the only place I could stay, but it turned out to be nice later. But that was probably the most bizarre thing that I saw. What's the single best thing that I observed? It's hard to. I think I'm going to put it all into one thing. I think the best thing that I observed in my trip was the humanity of the people along the way, and how they treated a stranger that came through. I was expecting to be, kind of completely shunned and people pissed off that I'm coming through, but I had so many people that welcomed me in with open arms, and that was shocking and surprising, and probably the best thing that I've ever seen. Sure, there was a lot of cool scenery and stuff, but I wasn't expecting kindness of strangers. And it was a lot. I was like, I was just this stinky guy traveling across the United States on my bike, and these people would just open their homes and open their hearts to me and not wanting anything in return, you know. And that was probably the best thing. Scenery wise, it was a glacier. All right, so this Iolani Palace, so let's pack up and we'll go to the next place. It's a little bit more unknown place, so we'll see you then. Here's our next stop. Hopefully it's not too windy up here. Didn't realize it was going to be so windy, but this is a Kaka'ako Waterfront Park. It's a very cool little hilly park right on the water. It's right outside of Waikiki, right outside of Ala Moana Park. And it's a great place for picnics, a lot of picnic areas and things, and even some nice views of Honolulu from this little hill. It's really great. So, all right, let's get to the next question. What do you do with your time on your day off? Well, that's a good question. Usually I spend the time doing chores, like washing my clothes, shopping, and resting. The towns that I usually would stop in are tiny towns. Like most of them are less than 1,000 people. So there's not a lot of touristy things to do in those little towns. But I would usually just kind of rest, just kind of like walk. I wouldn't ride my bicycle so much, but I would walk just to kind of use different muscles and get stretched out. There's a couple of towns that were kind of big that I stopped to do some touristy things. One of them was Great Falls. I went and did some of the tourist stuff at Great Falls, which is really nice. I did some touristy stuff in Fargo, kind of visiting the downtown. That was really great. But yeah, there's a lot of chores you got to do between. Usually I would rest at like a motel so that I could charge up all my batteries and things like that, and try to stay in a town that had a grocery store at least, so I could stock up on like electrolyte mix and snack stuff and food. But that's normally what I do. But I would do some kind of touristy things while I was there. But I figured I was like the whole time was a tourist, checking out places I haven't never seen before, really understanding the vastness of the United States. Some of these last videos that you would see is just the roads just go on forever in a straight line as far as you can see, and it seems like you'll never get to the horizon, but eventually you do. You just keep, as long as you're moving forward, you're good. You're doing good, right? I had some questions about navigation. How did I find my way across? My main source of navigation was the Adventure Cycling Association. They had mapped out this route that I took all the way from Anacortes, Washington to Bar Harbor, Maine. It's called the Northern Tier. And I ordered the map set from them. I think it was about $200, but it's like 11 maps, and it's well worth it. It has detailed maps of how to get around. They route you so that there's not a lot of traffic. there is camping information on every panel, numbers listed, of bike-friendly places to stay. Towards the end of the route, I didn't actually end my route at Bar Harbor, I ended in Boston. But from Buffalo to Boston, I kind of used Google Maps for bicycles to go through there. And it wasn't as easy because Google Maps is not really like a lot of research done on where to stay and stuff. So you had to doing your own route is a lot of research, but I did use most of the time. I used the Adventure Cycling Association maps. They also provide GPS files for your Garmin, so I loaded those in too. So I would use my Garmin for navigation, and if I have a question about a turn or something, I would pull my map out. Or if I'm planning the route for the next day or the next couple of days, I'd pull my map out and I would look for camping spots and resupply spots and make sure to call ahead and make sure that you have a place to stay. I learned that really early in my trip, that you need to call ahead and make sure that the places are available, because sometimes it's not. Like, it'll be full. When I went, it was like the beginning of the RV season, and the RVers were just taking up all the campsites, and that's something I didn't realize. But that's how I did. I used a bike-specific GPS for my bicycle, those files for that, and the Adventure Cycling Association maps. And at the very end, across New York and Massachusetts, I used Google Maps for bicycles. And you'll see in those videos coming up that it can be a challenge using those. But I made it to the end. I survived. Another kind of navigation thing there, I got questions on how fast I was going. That really depends on the day, but the way I would plan 10 miles per hour. And I found that if I did that, I would get a really good estimate on how long it would take me to get somewhere with the rest built in and lunch built in. So if I knew that someplace was 100 miles away, I would plan 10 hours. So I'd leave 7 o'clock in the morning, and I knew 10 hours later I should be at that place. That normally worked unless there was lots and lots and lots of hills, mountains and things. Early on in the trip, going through the Cascades, it was slower than that. So sometimes it would take me 10 hours to go 80 miles or 11 hours to go 80 miles because of the hills, and headwinds can get you too. But that's how I would plan. But I think the average moving speed was probably, I would say 12, 13 miles an hour. But I did get up really fast. I had headwinds in Montana where I was going like 30 miles an hour on the flats. It was like just like pushing me along, you know. But on the flip side, in Fargo, coming out of Fargo, the headwinds were so strong that I was only going like 4 miles an hour. And not only is that difficult physically, it's very difficult mentally to get through that. There was like one time I probably broke down mentally. It was coming out of Fargo, where I was like felt helpless. But I got over it. I took a day off, and that's coming up in a later video. So that was kind of what my average speed was. Yeah, so that's kind of all the questions that I got. But if you guys have any more questions as the videos come out, then just post them down, and I'll answer them I'll answer them in the video or in the comments, or I know I'm gonna make a final video when I get to the very end. We're getting up to like 1,800 miles now on the trip, so it's almost halfway through. So it's been a trip, kind of revisiting all these videos and stuff, and all the footage. So it's been fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this this little question and answer session in a couple places that I like to hang out here in Hawaii, and enjoy the rest of the videos coming up. It's been a trip. It's still hard to believe that I did it, you know, and it's fun revisiting and sharing it with you guys. So. All right, I'm gonna try to get off this windy hill and get back home, and you guys have a good one. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.